Welcome to Lease Accounting Automation. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you, Shivani. This is Matt, and I'm a CPA. I've been with CoStar now for almost 6 years, and really since the very beginning of the new accounting standards for lease accounting, ASC 842 and IFRS 16. Prior to working with CoStar, I led the lease accounting team at the Home Depot for about 6 years. And I also worked at a company called American Tower, which is a big cell phone tower company, and worked in lease accounting there as well. We had hundreds of thousands of leases at American Tower. So all in all, I've been in lease accounting for over 15 years now. And now, pretty exciting over the past 6 years at CoStar. We've really we've helped hundreds of companies like you go through their journey to lease accounting compliance, and picked up a lot of automation on lease accounting along the way. So excited to present that today. And when I worked at Home Depot, of course that's headquartered in Atlanta, and I would go to a lot of CPE events, like I'm sure many of you are here today to pick up some CPE credit. This is back when we used to do those events live and in person, right? But so I would attend those in Atlanta, and during that time I was pleased to meet Tammy Coley. And Tammy at that time worked at Cox Communications, another great Atlanta company. And Tammy was actually the first person to introduce me to this fascinating concept of automatic account reconciliations. She had been going through a process of implementing BlackLine, and so I was really excited when I found out that she was going to be available to present on this topic today. And Tammy, before I steal too much of your introduction, let me turn it over to you and allow you to introduce yourself.
Great, thanks, Matt. My name is Tammy Coley. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer at BlackLine. I've been with BlackLine for about 4 years now, and just like Matt said, prior to joining BlackLine, I was with Cox Communications based out of Atlanta. And my team, we spent we had a significant effort to transform our accounting processes using BlackLine. And so it's been great joining BlackLine and helping other customers be able to take advantage of some of those same digital transformation strategies using BlackLine.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. And again, a huge thank you for being with us today. So here's the agenda. I'm not going to read this slide, but just to give you a little bit of a background, we are talking about lease accounting automation. And these are the main points that we're going to cover. I always like to tell folks where we get this information, So Matt, how do you know these are the main points to talk about for lease accounting automation? So we really get this from three main areas. One, we talk with our partners at the Big Four accounting firms. We have alliances with those firms, and they tell us what the leading practices are and what's saving their clients' time and money. So we find out about it that way. Two, we find out about it from companies that switch to CoStar. So public companies had a deadline for ASC 842 and IFRS 16 about 2 years ago, and already many of those public companies are switching from a software that they chose 2 years ago and choosing to go through another implementation project and implementing CoStar software. So that, that's not ideal, right, for their planning, but they've determined that they want to pick up functionality that CoStar offers that they can't get other places. So when that happens, we ask them, why are you switching? What makes you motivated to make a change so quickly? And so we pick up knowledge from those discovery sessions as well. And a lot of things we're going to talk about today, you can only pick up this functionality in CoStar. And then finally, the third reason, or the third source of this information is our partnership with BlackLine. Just like we have an alliance partnership with Big Four accounting firms, we have a similar arrangement with BlackLine. We discovered early on that we really complement each other. BlackLine is not interested in becoming a lease accounting subledger or system for lease accounting. And same way, CoStar is not interested in competing with BlackLine. So it really became a situation where we're better together, and we share a lot of customers just by the kind of the size, the complexity of the customers' businesses. And so CoStar and BlackLine really complement each other. And we find out along the way, as we work with BlackLine, we discover leading practices and ways we can collaborate. So you're going to hear about some of those areas today as well. But for now, Shivani, that brings up our first polling question.
Which best describes your company and status for ASC 842 or IFRS 16 lease accounting transition? Please select your answer and remember to hit submit. We will allow 20 seconds for you to submit your answers.
Thank you, Shivani. I think I always hate to speculate or predict the answers to polling questions, but with the non-public company deadline coming up, I think we should have some non-public companies on the line. And I imagine with the audience, and the interaction with BlackLine, we'll have some public companies interested on increasing their level of automation too.
And here are our results.
Okay, great, thank you. And it is almost a tie between the public companies and non-public companies, so that's great. I think everybody will pick up something today that you can leave with, and with that, we'll just dive into the first bullet point, and that is integrating lease accounting software with other systems to eliminate manual efforts. So this is one of the biggest ones that we hear about, especially from those firms that are switching over to CoStar. We find out that integrations that they tried to implement with other software didn't work or weren't available at all. So quite frankly, if you want to have a modern accounting office, your systems have to be connected, and integrations are key to that. Really, and I'll just switch to the next slide here to show a diagram, but really the main thing that we hear about, right off the bat is companies want to integrate with their ERP system for journal entries. But with journal entries really are only kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, you have integrations that can feed in from other sources. You see some examples here, like AP history, currency rates, vendors, like master data files, and that's one form of vendor data that can come in. Another form of vendor data would be fleet vendor invoices, and information like that can come into a CoStar system. Discount rates is another example. Then outbound, we have journal entries, of course, AP and AR exports. So getting probably the most common neck and neck with journal entries would be an AP export, where CoStar facilitates the payment of landlords and lessors. Another integration is with BlackLine. You're going to hear more about that in a few moments from Tammy. And then ultimately with financial reporting systems, for your filing of financial statements, the 10Q if you're a public company, And also in the middle, you can see things that aren't even integrations, but are actually part of the lease accounting system. So, for example, lease accounting being together with lease administration, one seamless solution. That's vitally important as well. So, just kind of an opening slide to give you a quick understanding of just all the various integrations that can take place in and out of CoStar. Certainly not limited to these, but these are some of the more common ones that you'll see. And Shivani, that takes us to our next polling question.
What concerns you most about performing lease accounting under the new ASC 842 and IFRS 16 standards? Understanding the how-to details of the new standards, having to perform manual calculations or workarounds, providing lease-level details needed for auditors, reporting on all requested lease data fields. Nothing, I'm already a lease accounting rock star. Please remember, in order to have your response recorded, you must hit the submit button located in the lower right-hand corner of this box. We'll allow you 20 seconds to record your answer.
Thank you, Shivani. Tammy, I hope we have at least one or two lease accounting rock stars on the line today.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, there we go. Yeah, we do. Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we do have a couple of lease accounting rock stars, and yeah, who would claim to be that? Who is not? So way to go, guys. Tammy, I'm just going to immediately turn the next slide over to you because this is to talk about CoStar and the integration with BlackLine.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So I want to give you guys an overview of how BlackLine can complement the great work that you get from CoStar for your lease accounting. There's several different areas, and I'm just going to give you an overview now, and some of these things will go into more detail later on in this session. So one of the things that BlackLine can do in terms of integration with CoStar, you can see from the slide, we bring that data in from CoStar, and we can bring data in from other sources as well. The five things actually that we usually end up helping our customers to complement CoStar with are identifying those new leases, those additions, those leases that need to be updated in CoStar or added to CoStar. We also have a process that helps you to, that same process helps you to identify any leases that need to be terminated in CoStar. And then we have a process where we can help you to develop that automatic upload. So once you've identified those leases that require the additional leases as well as the ones that need to be terminated, giving you a means to be able to automate updating that lease information in CoStar. The other thing we can do is, to the extent that you have not integrated CoStar directly to your ERP, BlackLine can help you there by building out that journal entry for you and then helping you to post that lease activity to your ERP. So BlackLine can be that middle integration for you to get the CoStar journal entry to your ERP if you're not directly integrated. And of course, we can help you with reconciling those accounts. And so we can either help you with the reconciliations by bringing the balance details over, which, well, I didn't mean to say balance details, bringing the balances over, or we can also help you by bringing the detailed lease information over and automating that reconciliation process for you in BlackLine. And then lastly, we can complement your Rollforward in CoStar. So to the extent that you have additional requirements that we can help you meet with BlackLine for your Rollforward, we're happy to do that as well. So
okay, excellent. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Tammy. And my part here is just super quick. I just wanted to point out that with the CoStar and BlackLine Alliance partnership, one of the things that we worked on jointly was what we call the balance sheet reconciliation report. This is something that if you're already a CoStar customer, you're probably very familiar with what we call our accounting summary report. The balance sheet reconciliation report is kind of the accounting summary report with additional details specific to your GL account numbers, and that's been really important for the BlackLine partnership. And again, we collaborated with the team at BlackLine to create this, so it really does fit pretty seamlessly into the BlackLine ecosystem. Over to you, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. So this report is awesome in terms of helping our customers, whether you want to bring the detail over to your reconciliations in summary, like just agree the balance to the balance in the GL, or whether you want to bring in those details. Either way, we can help you get that done and help you automate that process. So this is just giving you an example of what those reconciliations can look like in BlackLine. Just to give you a little bit more details about how it works. Once you have that report that we talked about on the last slide and you bring that into BlackLine, we set up what we call GL mapping. That GL mapping teaches BlackLine how that data from CoStar maps to your reconciliations. And so whether it's 1 or 2 or 200 or 2,000 reconciliations, it doesn't matter. We're going to set up that GL mapping. It's going to tell BlackLine how to map either the balances or the details, depending on what you want. In the example that we're showing here, we're mapping those details, and we have them summarized, it looks like by location. So it's just showing you how, based on that mapping and based on BlackLine's functionality, we call it in-transit rules, we're able to bring those lease details to the reconciliations and certify those reconciliations with those details. So it's a totally automated process.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, I think I mentioned up front, the reconciliation functionality in BlackLine was the first thing I ever heard about related to BlackLine, and just something that has helped so many companies save time and really for accountants, right? Put time back in your day, right? Give you more time to spend with your family. So to the extent that you can auto certify, take man hours out of the process of reconciliations, we love that aspect of BlackLine and partnering with BlackLine to do that. Now, the next topic we're going to discuss is about discount rates. So really briefly, discount rates are important for lease accounting because the lease accounting calculations really start with a net present value calculation. And the net present value of your lease payments becomes the value of your lease liability, which is also the basis for your right-of-use asset amount. And so really, the discount rate is a key variable that you have to come up with. Most companies use the incremental borrowing rate. Now, I know non-public companies may choose to use a risk-free rate, but either way, you really have to keep track of a large number of discount rates because the rate can be different whether you're talking about real estate versus equipment, or based on geography, or based on currency, or based on the length of the lease term. So a 2-year rate is different than a 30-year rate. And you can imagine how many buckets a large company would have as far as terms and currencies and different types of real estate and equipment. So as we say here, large companies have hundreds of rates to choose from. And so what we've done in CoStar is we've automated the process of populating the incremental borrowing rate, or the risk-free rate if you're a non-public company and choose to use that. You can just set your business rules, have somebody periodically, usually our customers are updating their incremental borrowing rates once a month, sometimes once a quarter. But you have somebody whose responsibility it is to upload your rates into CoStar periodically. And then from there, CoStar, takes all the guesswork out. And so when you start a new lease, the system will automatically populate the correct rate. Next, and this is on a kind of a very similar vein, selecting lease and non-lease components for those NPV calculations automatically. And this really goes back to one of those opening slides where I said there should be a seamless connection between lease accounting and lease administration. And that's really, again, to save time. If you avoid double work, you, of course, are saving time. And so CoStar is one seamless solution. The lease administration team abstracts leases. They have to do that anyway to make sure that the lessors and vendors get paid on time. And so in CoStar, when the lease administration team abstracts a lease, automatically behind the scenes, based on your profiles, the lease accounting side of the software is automatically populated with those lease expenses that are needed for your lease accounting net present value calculations. So that's really the point here. You automatically have that data copied over. There's no need for double work. And because IFRS and US GAAP are different, ASC 842 is different from IFRS 16 in some respects. Your settings and profiles in CoStar can be different, but still automated. So the lease administration team can type in one lease abstract, and then that information can take two different paths automatically for IFRS and US GAAP. Another quick one here is populating key accounting dates by applying your company policy. So you can see just a brief sample on the screen here. These are, not all of the dates that could possibly be entered. There may be more for your company, but these are some, and you can see how confusing this could be, even with a drop-down list. Or am I supposed to start the accounting schedule as of the lease agreement date? Or how about the legal delivery date? Or the original lease commencement? Or maybe the possession date, right? I mean, those, you could probably, without any knowledge of lease accounting, right, you could probably make an argument for any of those. Now, most of our customers land, on the possession date as the appropriate start date for lease accounting. And then, the same thing can be applied, the same conversation could apply to the end date of the lease amortization schedule. Which date should you choose? What CoStar allows you to do, though, is to set a profile for this so the date will be automatically populated. So based on what the lease administration team enters into the abstract, the accounting team can automatically apply their accounting policies to those dates, and the amortization schedule will be automatically populated for those dates that correspond with your accounting policy. Okay, now let me turn it back over to Tammy to talk about a super important aspect where we see, I think, really a lot of benefit, and this involves matching with BlackLine.
Thanks, Matt. So yes, absolutely. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but this is where BlackLine can help you to using our transaction matching functionality. This is how BlackLine can help you to identify those new leases or those terminated leases. And so I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail to make sure you guys understand how we help here. So on this slide, this is an example of a fleet management file from a customer. And so this is where they have all of their invoice details. So you'll see here in this slide that they have all of their invoice details from their fleet management system, and there are 3 key fields that they need to be able to do their matching. Now, the reason why they need to do this matching is because they're trying to figure out which leases are new on the invoices and which leases they already had in CoStar but are no longer on their invoice, so they can determine their terminations. So on this slide, I've got my invoices from the fleet management system. These are my new invoices for the period. I've got these 3 key fields that I need to use for matching. And here I have my accounting summary. And you'll see on my accounting summary, based on the way this customer had set up CoStar, they didn't bring in those 3 key fields that they needed for matching. But they do have that system lease ID. And so based on that system lease ID, they're able to do, they have a lookup table. So we're able to bring that lookup table into BlackLine. And using that system lease ID, we're able to add those 3 fields that we needed to be able to match up those transactions. So we're trying to match up those lease transactions between the lease invoices and what's in CoStar. And we're going to use this lookup table to do that. So once we have that lookup table in BlackLine and we've loaded our invoice data, we've loaded our CoStar data, we've added those 3 fields to our CoStar data so we can match, what you're seeing now is how we set up pass rules. And these pass rules are teaching BlackLine how the data should match from the invoices to the CoStar data. So this is just setting up a pass rule, and then you're going to see here on the next slide, for this customer, over 11,000 automated matches. And so I don't know how many lines of detail you may need to be scrubbing through today, maybe using Excel spreadsheets to try to figure out what the new leases are for the period versus what the terminations are for the period. But this is just going to show you the power of BlackLine and CoStar together and how we can help you to determine which of those leases are, in fact, new or terminated for the period. So within seconds, you've got 11,000 matches where BlackLine has gone in and done all that work for you. This is just an example of one of the matches where you can see the top part of that match is showing you the lease details from the invoices. So the invoice details has the 3 lines that you see kind of in the middle of your screen. And then at the bottom of your screen, you see that payment amount as it relates to CoStar. And so you see how BlackLine, this is just one of those 11,000 matches, and you see how BlackLine was able to bring that together for you, match that up for you, so you don't have to do that manually, and you don't have to worry about going through the VLOOKUPs and all of the complexities of trying to do that matching in Excel. The other thing that I wanted to point out to you here is your data doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. And so we know that sometimes the data that you get from your lease invoices might have, leading zeros, or it may have trailing zeros, or it may have, you may only need the first 9 digits of a field. You may need some enhancements. And so I wanted you to know that when BlackLine does this matching process for you, there are some enhancements that we can do in the data source itself, and there are other enhancements that we don't even need to do in the data source. We can do it in the pass rule. So in this example, you see that there were 2 leading zeros for the vehicle unit from the invoice data from the fleet management system. There are 2 leading zeros. Those don't exist in CoStar. So we were still able to match that up. And that's just one simple example of how BlackLine can help you overcome some of the challenges that you may find with your data. Once you've matched everything up, so you've got your invoice data from your fleet management system, and you've got your CoStar data, and you've matched it all up, and now what you have left, the additions, anything from your fleet management system, from the invoice side, anything that didn't find a match, that's going to be your additions for the period. And then on the CoStar side, if it didn't find a match to the invoice, that's going to be your terminations for the period. And now all we have to do is, at BlackLine, we can give you the output, your additions and your terminations, and we can give those to you in the format that you can then use to load those to CoStar. And this is the way we help you to automate updating CoStar for those additions and for the terminations. Also, if we find a match, but it didn't match to 0, so there's a variance match, we can take care of those as well, and then give you an opportunity. We'll give you kind of a dashboard where you can take a look at those variance matches, and you can decide what you need to update. Is it something that you need to update in CoStar, or is it something that you need to reach out to your vendor to find out what may have happened there? But you can also do the matching with a variance so that it's very easy to point out the exceptions to you. So you can spend your time updating the additions, updating the terminations, and dealing with the exceptions versus spending a lot of time just figuring out how everything matches up. This is an example of the journal entry. So remember, I spoke a little earlier about if you have not integrated CoStar directly with your ERP, I wanted to be able to share with you that BlackLine can help you with that integration. And so what we do is we bring that data from CoStar, which CoStar has already generated all the debits and the credits. And so CoStar is telling you exactly what you need to post to your ERP. BlackLine receives that data from CoStar, gets it in the format for your journal entry for your ERP, and then we're able to automatically post that to your ERP for you. In this example, there's over 58,000 lines of detail from the journal entry from CoStar, and this customer wanted us to just to post those entries at a summary level. And so what you see in the red box at the top here, you see how we summarize that in about 8 or 9 lines. We could have, if we wanted to, we could have posted that. We could have posted all 58,000 lines individually, or you could just let us know how you want that data summarized for your journal entry, and we could summarize it. So at the top, I've got it like totally summarized, 1 line per account. You might want to do it by department, or you might want to do something a little different. Just wanted you to know that you have all those options available to you when we help you to automate that journal entry. All right, time for another poll.
What is your biggest challenge with your current lease accounting software, or biggest concern with selecting a new system? Lost productivity performing manual tasks in spreadsheets, stress over lack of lease level details for auditors, concern about errors for lease data entry and validation, inability to perform requested reports easily on all lease data. None. Our lease accounting system is bulletproof. Please remember, in order to have your response recorded, you must hit the submit button. We'll give you about 20 seconds to respond.
Okay, thank you, Shivani. And while we're waiting on the responses on that, I did notice a question that popped in, and it said, do you integrate with and then list a specific software package? And, I think I know I speak for CoStar. I think I could also speak for BlackLine, but I'll let Tammy confirm. I mean, really, we have not found a situation where we have to turn away a request for an integration. So we have implemented hundreds of solutions. In that population, there are dozens and dozens of different types of financial, ERP systems and other systems that CoStar integrates with. And just based on the way that we provide files back and forth, we really don't run into situations where we can't integrate with a specific system. So we'll work with your IT professionals and make that happen. Tammy, I don't want to speak for you, but I assume that's a very similar answer from BlackLine's perspective, right?
Absolutely. So any data source, any subsystem, we can bring that data in and help you to automate your processes. Absolutely correct.
Cool. Thank you. And we see the results now. Thank you, Shivani. And yeah, I mean, really right off at the top there, lost productivity due to manual tasks and spreadsheets. I mean, that's always top of mind for accountants. Not that we don't love our Excel, but we like to make it as efficient as possible. And then errors, which is actually by a slim margin the number one answer, concern about errors for lease data entry and validation, and that's actually really appropriate because that's what we're going to talk about next. Utilize accounting software to check for errors. So what we have in CoStar is a couple of different ways that we check for errors. And ultimately, this just helps you sleep at night, right? Whether you're the person responsible for entering the data or you're the person responsible for checking everything, to make sure it's right, that somebody else has entered. If you have a systematic way to check for errors, that's going to help you sleep better at night. And really in CoStar, there's two main ways that data gets into the system. You have manual entries. This is where an accountant or somebody in lease administration is entering information into the system, maybe on a lease-by-lease basis. That is perfectly normal, and as they go through that process, there are, of course, opportunities for errors, whether it just be a careless mistake or just a misapplication of policy or something like that. This really makes me think back to years and years ago when I first took a new job. I started working at that big cell phone tower company I talked about, American Tower, and I was actually relocating for that job. I was moving from Birmingham to Atlanta, and we're like many times in that situation, we had a house waiting to sell in Birmingham, and so I was kind of in between, and I'd go home on the weekends. Sunday afternoon, right after I started, the VP of accounting called me at home, said, "Hey, don't travel to Atlanta tomorrow for work. We want you to fly to Boston." And Boston was where the records were stored for American Tower, all the lease records. So they had this huge library of hundreds of thousands of leases for cell phone towers. And he said, so don't go to Atlanta tomorrow, fly to Boston. You're going to stay there all week. And we have one job for you to do. I want you to look at the stack of leases that they're going to provide when you get there, and determine if the leases are operating or capital. So those were the classifications under what was then called FAS 13. So under FAS 13, which later became known as ASC 840, you could classify a lease as capital or operating. And really for a land lease, which is what most of these towers were built on, for a land lease, there were two main things. There could be a bargain purchase option, or there could be a clause that transfers ownership at the end of the lease. So that was my job. When I got there, literally the stack was as tall as I am. And so I spent the week reading those leases, determining if there was a bargain purchase option or a transfer of ownership. And if those existed, it was a capital lease. If not, it was an operating lease. So the same kind of process happens today. Under ASC 842, the names have changed a little bit. It's still an operating lease or a finance lease, but really almost the same tests exist, and accountants have to make these decisions. But the good news now, and maybe this is why I get fired up to talk about lease accounting automation, because I did go through those one by one, by hand, reading and updating a spreadsheet. Now with CoStar, you're able to do this largely, in an automated fashion, at least, on your screen. But let's say, for example, an accountant is reviewing one and they flag the lease as an operating lease, but they also flag that there is a transfer of ownership. Well, that's not an operating lease. It should be a finance lease. Well, back in the old days, that might have gone unnoticed. Maybe an auditor would have caught it later and noted it as an audit exception. But with CoStar, the system will automatically flag that. If the accountant makes that error, the system will give a pop-up warning and say, "Hey, are you sure? We think this should be a finance lease." Now, the accountant, we're not going to force force the accountant. We want to allow judgment and allow you to apply your company's policies. But if the accountant overrides that warning, there's still going to be an alert that hey, we think this is an exception. That alert will be viewable on the screen on the lease. It can also be run with all of the leases at one time. You can have a accounting exceptions report. So that'd be really useful for a manager, for example, who wants to check over a team's decisions regarding lease testing. And that's really just one example. There are dozens and dozens of checks that we've automated in CoStar, and that's on the manual entry side, as well as when you upload data in bulk. So all of those dozens and dozens of checks that help you sleep at night, they're available whether you input entries one by one or you upload those entries into the system. Now with a bulk upload, I'll just switch to the next slide here. You also get the added functionality of the ETL tool, and this is just our way of describing a spreadsheet that's used to upload data into CoStar all at one time, or a bulk upload. But what you get with CoStar is you get this, you can see there in the kind of the top right-hand corner, you get a validation message. So this file was successfully validated, in green. So that lets you know that the data that you just uploaded, it fit the criteria for the type of data that you were entering. So at a very simple level, you don't enter dates into the field that the dollars should go in and that kind of thing. And of course, it gets way more complex than that. But again, dozens and dozens of validation checks. Now, if there is an exception, it doesn't reject the whole file. It just rejects the lines that have errors. Then you get to go in and correct those errors. So it makes things faster, and it lets you have some peace that your data is clean. Now, one other point that really goes hand in hand with this is that the policies that we talked about, and I mentioned a lot of references regarding data entry and the users that enter the data, and then you have other users who are perhaps supervisors or managers who check. And we understand at CoStar, that's not a one-size-fits-all kind of process. And so what we give you see a brief example here on the screen. Every one of our customers has this flexibility to set their own internal controls. So you can decide how many levels of approval are needed. You can decide, if you can approve your own, do your own first level of review or not, and really many, many other aspects of really dialing in this to your own, internal control environment. This goes for lease accounting and lease administration, and they work separately. So in lease administration, we call it lease verification, but really very similar processes on both sides of the fence, and you can dial those in according to both departments' policies. Okay, so now we're going to talk about satisfying auditor requirements. And of course, this is really near and dear to a lot of accountants because many of us were auditors. Many of us have friends who are auditors, but we want to spend, when it comes to our own auditor experience at our companies, we want to spend as little time as possible answering their questions and providing, back and forth spreadsheets and, explanations. So at CoStar, we keep that in mind. We try to make this really easy. And matter of fact, we've had candid conversations with Big Four accounting firms, and they have told us, thank you. Thank you for making your reports so easy to audit. And the reason why they say that, really a lot of times they're talking about the disclosure report. And so under 842 in the U.S. and IFRS 16 internationally, one of the huge changes with the new lease accounting rules was that the disclosure requirements really increased, I just say estimated, increased at least tenfold, right? Used to be we would provide a 5-year and thereafter report that would talk about the lease obligations going forward. Well, you still have to do that. You also have to provide weighted average calculations, weighted average discount rate, weighted average lease term. Of course, you have the right of use asset, lease liability calculations, and balances that have to be presented. So the disclosure report really went from a one paragraph to maybe a quarter of a page to probably 2 pages now for most companies, and it's required for GAAP, right? So it's required for public and non-public companies who are going to comply with U.S. GAAP. And the auditors who we talk with, they say thank you, because not only does CoStar provide their disclosure report, it's automatic, touch of a button, you get your disclosures. Immediately behind that report, saved off, is the lease level detail. So auditors can look at the disclosure report, then tie it out lease by lease, make their selections, and confirm everything, really without asking the accountants, any more questions. It's all right there in one report. So again, all the details are there. Now, another one that we've really had a lot of success with, and a lot of our customers really rave about this report, is the Rollforward report. Now, a Rollforward is just a report that takes the beginning balance of an account. So for lease accounting, it's the right of use asset and lease liability accounts. But the Rollforward will take the beginning balance, say as of January 1st, and then compare that to the ending balance as of December 31st, and then talk about or roll forward what made the balance change during that time period. So in lease accounting, the most common change is just normal amortization. So amortizing down the liability balance, amortizing the right of use asset down, that's one category of change. But there can be many other categories like impairments for the right of use asset, or terminations, other remeasurements like partial terminations, or renewals, say you exercise an option. So all of these can be categories of change that they really should be called out separately in a roll forward, and auditors commonly ask for this. Now, back in my Home Depot days, I was responsible for preparing this, and it would, no lie, this would take days. If I was lucky, maybe 2 or 3 days. If I missed something in my pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and everything that I was trying to work on, it could take over a week. So again, this report out of CoStar can be run in an instant. It can be run for any amount of time. So basically it uses the amortization tables in CoStar to create this report. I'll show an example here. Create this report in an instant. And we've actually had so much success with this report that a lot of our customers are running this every month now as a part of their account reconciliation process. It can be run also with the currency conversions included. So from lease to local to functional currency all the way into reporting currency. As long as you've uploaded those rates into CoStar, this report can be presented with those currency conversions included. So again, this is another example of how we're able to save a significant amount of time, both in the annual audit process and just on a monthly basis to give more visibility into what has changed in these accounts. But now there's, as we talked about up front, there are some situations where BlackLine enhances the reports that CoStar presents. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to talk about that from a roll-forward perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Yes, so sometimes there are manual entries to the GL that, for whatever reason, you just haven't gotten them into CoStar for the period, and so you need to make manual entries. that need to be incorporated into your Rollforward process. There could be conversion rates that have not yet been loaded or are not being loaded to CoStar. So whatever the reason is, we can enhance that Rollforward that you're getting that CoStar has. So the Rollforward from CoStar is an excellent starting point. Sometimes you have some additional things that you need to add into that. And so that's where BlackLine can come in to help you to take care of those manual entries as well as conversion rates, or for whatever reason, maybe you want to use slightly different categories or something. We can absolutely generate that Rollforward for you in the format that you would require. So just to give you a little bit of information on what that looks like, it's bringing your data from CoStar into BlackLine and bringing those manual entries in, bringing those balances in so we can calculate that FX for you. So taking care of all those things and putting it together in a package for you in BlackLine and then generating that Rollforward report. So it's just another way that BlackLine and CoStar work very well together to help you complete the entire process.
Okay, excellent. And Shivani, I think that brings up our last polling question.
What functionality or feature would help your job the most for lease accounting under ASC 842 and IFRS 16? One-click standard reports, lease level details for auditors, automatic reconciliations, integration with ERP, GL, etc., or matching? Please select your answer and remember to hit submit. We will give 20 seconds for you to submit your answers.
I think all of these would certainly be valuable. You know, the one that I think takes a little bit of time to get your head around is the matching functionality. But I mean, that just has so many possibilities. You know, especially if you're dealing with a fleet, you know, large amount of copier leases or vehicle leases or, you know, something like that. Matching could be really valuable. Yeah, thank you, Shivani. No, go ahead, Tammy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, absolutely, when you have a high volume of leases, setting up that match process can be very helpful.
Yeah, and not surprising here, integrations are top of mind for a lot of people, and really across the board for the rest. You know, reconciliations, details for auditors, and one-click standard reports. So thank you to everybody for that feedback. Now, just to wrap up, I want to take a look and see what questions we have out there. You know, I see one. Tammy, I'll take one first about CoStar. I'll give you a heads up about one that's asking about auto certification and Rex. But first, somebody has asked, how many leases do you have to have in order, you know, to implement a lease accounting solution like CoStar? You know, so that's really, I mean, that's kind of in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, the number of leases. I mean, we've had some customers who were, you know, in the dozens of leases, right? So less than 50 leases, but the complexity of those leases were such that they wanted, a best-in-class kind of solution, and so they implemented CoStar. Now, you know, I'd say on average, you know, if you get into more than 50 leases, certainly once you get into 100 leases or more, you know, CoStar really makes a lot of sense and will save you a ton of time. Now, Tammy, one about, it says, I see you asked, you talked about auto certification of accounting reconciliations. What does that mean?
Oh, okay. So it means that CoStar can send a file to BlackLine, and BlackLine can pick up that file, and it can either be at the balance level per business unit, or it can be the detailed lease level per business unit. But once BlackLine brings that data in, we automate the process of sending that data to the appropriate reconciliations, and it auto-certifies. And so no human touch, auto-certification from CoStar to BlackLine into your reconciliation processes.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm glad we had that question, because, you know, that's really one of the coolest features, right? I mean, if you can automatically certify that something is accurate, you know, it takes work not only from the preparer of the reconciliation, right? The preparer is able to focus on other things, but the supervisor, manager, you know, all the way up the process of review, you know, really saves time for everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, Giovanni, I think we have about exhausted our time, so I'll turn it back over to you to wrap up.
This marks the end of our webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us on future webinars. You can find information about upcoming webinars in the resources widget. Don't forget to download your CPE certificate in the certification widget. Your CPE certificate will also be available to download in the Thank You for Attending email that will be sent within the next 24 hours. If you have any questions regarding CPE credits, please feel free to email conf@financialexecutives.org. Have a wonderful day, and again, thank you to all of our speakers for today's webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.